Hi everybody, and this is Burke Lyle here. It is Monday, February 17th. It is the middle of February, and I'm here now. I want to get my thoughts on the NBA All-Star Game. And YouTube commenters, anybody who is watching this video, what were your thoughts on it as well? So in years past, NBA All-Star Game, it was played by, it was high scoring. It was 192 to 184, and there was very little defense. It was kind of like cool dunks, 3-point shootouts. I mean, it was fun, and this All Star game was different since obviously it was for three quarters was very similar. It was not very much defense, a lot of 3-point shooting. Players shot kind of long threes. There were some nice dunks. Defense was very limited. But in the fourth quarter, that's really when it kind of all changed. Since this year, whatever the score was, I think it was 133 to 124, in honor of Kobe Bryant, the first to 157, or whatever, had to win. I think a couple of years ago, they started initiating charities where if your team won or whatever, you got to give more to that charity. You got like a prize money for your charity. And this year, I think each team got 100,000 in terms of each individual quarter. And then in the fourth quarter, I think there's an additional 300,000 on the line. So in this fourth quarter, there was no clock, first to 24, in honor of Kobe Bryant. And with that format, all of a sudden, just what you saw in the All-Star game was completely different, something I've never seen before. And to be honest, when I was watching at the time, I was kind of just frustrated. Like, come on, this game's dragging on forever. I mean, this is the All-Star game. I really don't care who wins. And what was going on is just intense defense. There was very little spacing. It was sort of like if you watch NBA, say from, I don't know, 15, 20, 25 years ago, kind of Jordan 90s Bulls, kind of 2000s Pistons, that type of era where there was spacing was very limited, 3-point shooting was at a minimum. And the part that annoyed me the most about the fourth quarter is the foul call. I thought there were way too many foul calls. Since normally I watch the All-Star game, there's very little no fouls. I mean, I don't want to see free throw shooting in the All-Star game. Again, since you don't make it to the All-Star game based on your ability to shoot free throws. Free throw shooting is basically not really, it's not something you'll be an all-star for. All right, if you shoot 90% from the free throw line, you're not going to make it to the All-Star game if that's all you're good at, right? So what it was is I thought there's too many fouls. The game dragged on way too long. I think there probably, I felt like there were more free throws than there probably were than 3-point attempts during the fourth quarter, and the spacing was very poor. And again, I give the players credit for trying on defense. I mean, it was lockdown defense, I get it, but again, with lockdown defense, it kind of looked like college basketball. There was a low scoring, and you know what it is? It wasn't the NBA that I was used to. Since I watched plenty of NBA regular season, and don't get me wrong, I like the NBA. In fact, I do play-by-play. When I practice my play-by-play skills, I do plenty of NBA games. I enjoy the NBA for the most part. But really, and it's not on the players, really, I think it's on the officials. I think they should have been cut more slack on the fouls and not had all the fouls and all the free throw shooting. I mean, that is not, there should have been less of that. And again, you watch regular season basketball, they don't play that hard in defense. They do not. I mean, you see Giannis, yes, he's a great defender, but he does not guard LeBron like that on every possession during the regular season. And again, it's one quarter of one game, right, where they're going all out. Again, many of the players have not played a game in 3 or 4 days and will not play a game for another 3 or 4 days. So, again, they can play hard for, it's basically, you know what it was? It was like a pickup game. There was no clock, and it took, for my estimate, about 45 minutes for them to score that 24th point or whatever. It took a very long time. Thank goodness there are no commercials. Otherwise, it would have taken even longer. And granted, give them credit, but just I don't like that brand of basketball. Like I just mentioned, low scoring. I like offense. You talk about you can go two extremes of basketball. You can let's say Virginia played Baylor in basketball. Two great defensive teams. You might have a 52 to 50 game. I hate those type of games. They're not fun to watch. Poor spacing, a lot of fouls, shot clock running down. Or there's the Rockets Wizards game, 159, 158 or you see teams scoring the 130s and 40s all the time in the NBA, right? Good spacing, fast pace, and again, slow paced, poor spacing. That brand of basketball just wasn't fun to watch. So it's just the quality of play I thought in the fourth quarter. The type of play is what annoyed me. And more than anything, it was the fouls. So again, it worked out. It was fine. But just at the time, to me, I couldn't watch it. And again, I've had my complaints against the NBA over the past few years, right? Of all the major sports leagues. You do the MLB, huge fan of the MLB. I talk about it all the time. I love the MLB. When there's long playoff games, and I guess it depends on people's taste. Since if you love basketball, right, you probably didn't care. That fourth quarter probably wasn't boring or probably wasn't annoying, right? Postseason baseball, I'm never annoyed by it. This game takes 4 hours or takes 3. I'm just so locked in, I don't even care, right? If, I don't know, football, I do football all the time. Football is great, right? I don't have too many complaints against the NFL. NHL, I have almost no complaints against. I think it's great, other than that the fact that they had 3 lockouts. I also announce NHL games as well, too, which again, very fast pace. And again, and then in basketball, I think that's the league I have the most complaints about, since again, I don't like all the fouls, like constantly stopping the clock or whatever, or slowing the game down. I don't like the NBA playoffs. Of all the 4 playoff leagues, of all the 4 major sports in the playoffs, if I had to rank them, again, love them MLB playoffs. I think it's great. I think I'm going to like it even better in a couple of years when they expand it. Talked about that about a week ago. NFL playoffs is great too. While yes, it is very competitive. Normally the best teams do come out on top, more likely than not. You are prone to see upsets as well. Very good playoffs, love it. NHL playoffs, best out of 7s might be the best, since you talk about overtime, and then what happens in overtime, right? Not knowing who's going to win, very unpredictable. Sort of like a long version of March Madness, a very extended version of March Madness, right? NBA playoffs is by far my least favorite playoffs. Since your team's in it, like let's say this year, DC sports fan, right? If the Wizards get in, they somehow get hot, catch the Magic, get in, they're not going to go far. They're going to lose to the Bucks in 4. They're not going to go very far. So that's another thing about it. And even if they get good, like even years past, you're a fan of an NBA team that's pretty good, so 4 or 5, they're not going to win a championship. Their ceiling's probably the second round, right? If you're a 3 seed, maybe conference finals. Maybe I can think about getting the NBA finals, but just it's different. It's not as it's less competitive. So again, when I was watching that All-Star game fourth quarter, it just made me remind me and think about all the things I don't like about the NBA, since again, the NBA is the league I'm most critical about. I like it. I like it for sure. I like watching really good regular season basketball, living here in the Atlanta area. It's fun to tune on and watch Trae Young play, 2 or 3 times a week. I watch the Hawks. I went to a few Wizards games in Washington, D.C. this year. That was so much fun to watch. So again, it's not that I don't like the NBA. NBA regular season's fine. Just when it gets to the playoff time, when you want to compare the NBA playoffs to the NHL playoffs at the same time, Stanley Cup versus NBA, I'm going Stanley Cup playoffs all the way. I'm a hockey guy. So when it comes to hockey versus basketball, kind of 2 competitors going head to head basically every night. and basically their playoffs basically go overlap pretty much every night, all the way through the conference finals, and then obviously the league finals are different. They're on separate days. They obviously don't want to avoid each other. But again, if you compare them together, that's when I start to come and like the NHL better. Even though the NHL has gone through 3 lockouts, it's a very different league. Their players make a lot less money, and they're a lot less famous overall, right? But again, so I didn't think I'd be going on talking about things I don't like about the NBA, but again, there are plenty of things I don't like about the NBA, but I also really like it. But just when it gets to playoff time, it's not as exciting, right? So again, the question is, what do I have wrong with the NBA? In the All-Star game, I liked it overall. I thought it was a good product, but just the way the fourth quarter was played, it annoyed me. And again, I'm coming on about 9 o'clock, so before many of the sports shows come on, and I want to hear what other people have to say. Since I watched the highlights again of the fourth quarter this morning, right? Kind of rewatched it, and again, was I too frustrated? Yes. And in future years, will I get used to it? Yes. I just think for me, it just was something I was never used to, something that I never saw before, right? And I was like, I just wasn't used to that. Wait a minute, this is not the All-Star game I knew watching, right? Since, again, the All-Star game I grew up watching, I probably watched, first All-Star game I remember watching was probably 2009, right? It kept getting higher and higher scoring, and the league's trying to change that. So again, if this format continues next year, that will be fine. I'll be okay with it. But again, the NBA All-Star game, it took way too long. They said it was going to start at 8, probably didn't start till maybe 8:30, 8:40. And then it took probably almost 3 hours long considering halftime and how long the fourth quarter took. So again, the NBA All-Star game is not a typical NBA game by any measures. For the first 3 quarters, there's almost no defense. In the fourth quarter, they play more defense than they do in any regular season game. And I watched the regular season basketball. It is not like that. It does not take forever to score 24 points. It is not like pickup basketball. Since obviously if players play like that, like they did in that fourth quarter, every night, then there's no way you could sustain that. I really don't think there is. And obviously it was best on best, so you kind of want to see how they did defensively, right? But again, in the regular season, like James Harden doesn't, in the regular season, like I watch him play, or LeBron James play, or all these guys. They don't guard more times than not the best offensive player. Usually, the best defender on an NBA team probably has lesser offensive ability than most players. And that's not the case all the time, but that's the case most of the time. So what I'm saying is, if the NBA was like the way it was in that fourth quarter of the All-Star game all the time, I wouldn't like it. I would hate the product. It'd be just like college basketball. I couldn't watch it. So that's not the typical NBA. Fast-paced, high-scoring, shooting a bunch of three-pointers, stuff like that. That's just not the way it is, right? And again, the All-Star game is very different, obviously, right? You talk about the MLB All-Star game, Max Scherzer throwing 98, 99 through 2 innings, right? He's not going to do that in the regular season. And he's not going to come out after 2 innings, right? So yes, All-Star games are different for that point in time. And the NBA All-Star game overall, looking back at it, the fourth quarter was fine. I just think the one improvement I think they have to do is just give them slack, let them foul, give them hard fouls, really limit the fouls unless it's just obvious or it's just over the top, but just in order to speed up the game in the fourth quarter, limit the free throw shooting, let them play basketball. Since in pickup basketball, you don't shoot free throws, right? Instead, or if there is a foul, just let them inbound it. Don't worry about all the free throws. And that's one thing about the All-Star game. No free throws. If you foul, just inbound and just keep playing. All right, that's what I would do. So again, there's just some changes I want to make to the All-Star game. I thought it was good. It was something new. And again, I'm gonna have to get used to it. I'm gonna have to adapt to the new format, say next year and years past. And again, the All-Star game most of the time may not be on my priority list. most of the time. Like I might watch it, but I might not. So we'll see. So again, it was something different, very different than what we saw in years past. So my personal grade for the All-Star game, I give it a B minus. The fourth quarter, I give it a C plus. Again, so that's the thing. So again, am I gonna watch it? Sure. When the NBA comes back, I'm gonna watch it. I always look forward to Thursday TNT, Saturday ABC games. Those are my favorite. Obviously, I watch the Hawks right here as we're in the Atlanta market right now. I watch the Wizards out of market games. So I watch plenty of NBA. I like the NBA. But I've always had some problems with the NBA. Really over the last, they've really started over the last few years. So again, it's the way, so people want to ask me, what's my least favorite part about basketball? Well, I just said fouling. Fouling is probably my least favorite part of basketball. Free throws and having kind of the rhythm of the game just stop all of a sudden, right? And also, I measured them. I thought the commercial timeouts were way too long. Some of them lasted I timed them. Some of them lasted 3 to 4 minutes. That's another thing about playoff basketball is commercial timeouts, I think, are 3 to 3.5 minutes long from my understanding. And we're in the regular season, I think it might be 2 to 2.5 minutes. So, again, way too many commercials. Games take too long. That's the thing. So they're kind of my basketball pet peeves, which I have far more than basketball than probably any other sport for that matter. So again, these are my thoughts on the All-Star game. Obviously, people will agree and disagree with me, but that's kind of the way it was. And the reason why I was talking about it is basically I didn't plan on talking about this until really this morning, but this is probably the biggest story in sports right now. Since again, this is kind of a slow period in sports. This is one of the slowest sports periods of the year. Since again, talk about the major sports, the NFL. The NFL draft is 2 months away. Free agency is about a month away. Major League Baseball, yes, guys are reporting spring training, but there's no games. And the NHL, yes, they're playing games, but what is there to talk about? Again. So this is probably the biggest story right now in sports, the NBA All-Star Game. So again, I wanted to give my thoughts on this. Again, I really enjoy talking sports. Felt really good just to put this video out and kind of share my opinion of how I felt. So thank you anybody for watching this video. I appreciate it. And yeah, from over the next couple days, I don't know what I'll do. It's a slow sports period. It's probably right along with MLB All-Star break. It's one of the slowest sports periods of the year. I don't know what it's gonna be hard to do. And yeah, I'll just spring training games start this Friday. I'll watch spring training really starting this weekend, and start watching the NBA again as well, starting on Thursday. So again, thank you everybody, and we'll see you next time.